Today we will talk about the life of a man who made the whole world laugh, but who himself cried many times in silence. His name is Charlie Chaplin. He was not born rich. In fact, he was born in extreme poverty. He faced hunger, sadness, and loneliness. But instead of giving up, he turned his pain into comedy. He showed us that laughter can heal, that even in the darkest times there is light. In this video, we will learn about his story. In 9 chapters, from his poor childhood to becoming one of the most famous men in history. This is not just history. This is a lesson about life, success, and hope. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Poor Childhood. Charlie Chaplin was born in London in 1889. His family was very poor. His father was a singer, but also an alcoholic. He left the family when Charlie was still a child. His mother tried her best. She worked as a singer on the stage. But soon she became sick and could not work anymore. Charlie and his brother Sidney grew up in extreme poverty. Sometimes they had no food to eat. Sometimes they slept on the streets or in poor houses. At one point, his mother was so ill that she had to go to a mental hospital. Charlie and Sidney were sent to a workhouse, a place where poor children lived and worked for food. Can you imagine being a small child, hungry, cold, and without your parents? That was Charlie's life. Many people would have given up. Many children would have lost hope. But Charlie kept something special inside him, the ability to laugh, even in pain. He would watch people, study their movements, and later use those memories to make the world laugh. His poor childhood was full of suffering, but it gave him a gift, the power to understand human sadness and turn it into comedy. This was the seed of the man who would later become the most famous comedian in the world. Chapter 2. Love for Acting. Even though Charlie Chaplin grew up in poverty, one thing was always in his heart: the stage. His parents were both connected to music and acting. His father was a singer, and his mother, Hannah, performed small shows in theaters. But life was cruel. His father disappeared because of alcohol, and his mother became too sick to work. Still, the little spark of acting stayed alive in Charlie. When Charlie was only a child, he would copy the way people walked, talked, and behaved. If someone walked funny, Charlie would copy it and make others laugh. If someone had a strange voice, he could imitate it. This was not just for fun, it was Charlie's way to survive. Laughter gave him hope when life gave him pain. At the age of 5, something happened that changed his life forever. His mother was singing on stage, but suddenly her voice broke. The audience laughed at her. She could not continue. The manager pushed little Charlie to go on stage and perform instead. Imagine a poor boy, nervous, scared, standing in front of a crowd. But Charlie did something amazing. He sang, and then he began to imitate people in the audience. He made funny movements. He made faces, and suddenly, the people laughed and clapped for him. For the first time in his life, Charlie felt the power of the stage. He felt that he could give people joy. That night, a dream was born. He wanted to be an actor. But dreams are never easy. Charlie was poor, hungry, and sometimes homeless. He had no money for training, no rich family to help him. Still, he practiced every day. He watched actors in the streets, in theaters, and in circuses. He learned by observing people, the way they walked, their expressions, their small mistakes. Every face, every movement, every sound became a lesson for him. At the age of 9, he joined a group of child dancers called the 8 Lancashire Lads. It was a small job, but it gave him the chance to be on stage again. He danced, he made people smile, and he earned a little money to survive. For Charlie, the stage was not just a job, It was a way to escape his sadness. When he performed, he was no longer the poor boy with no father and a sick mother. He was free. He was alive. Later, Charlie started working in small theaters as an actor. He got small roles in comedy plays, and every time he stepped on stage, people noticed him. He had something different, something natural. He did not just act. He became the character. People laughed, not because he told jokes, but because he showed the truth of human life in a funny way. Charlie Chaplin's love for acting was stronger than hunger, stronger than pain, stronger than poverty. Acting gave him hope. Acting gave him identity. Acting gave him a reason to live. And this love, this passion, would one day take him from the dark streets of London to the bright lights of Hollywood. Chapter 3. The Big Break in America. Charlie Chaplin's journey from the poor streets of London to the shining lights of America was not easy. He had already spent years working in small theaters, playing little roles, making people laugh with his expressions and movements. But inside, he knew he was meant for something bigger. He was not satisfied with just surviving. He wanted to create something that the whole world would never forget. In his teenage years, Charlie joined a famous comedy company called Fred Karno's troupe. This was a big step for him. The troupe traveled to different places, performing funny shows. Charlie learned discipline, timing, and how to make people laugh without even saying a word. He was young, full of energy, and determined to rise above his painful past. Then came the opportunity that changed his life forever. In 1910, the troupe traveled to America. Imagine a poor boy from the slums of London, now standing in a new world filled with possibilities. America was full of theaters, movies, and a growing entertainment industry. Charlie did not know it yet, but this land would make him one of the most famous men in history. During one of his performances in the United States, people noticed him. His style was different. He was small, thin, and almost shy, but on stage he became a giant. He could make the whole audience laugh with just one funny walk, one surprised look, one clumsy fall. His talent was natural. It came from the years of watching people, studying their movements, and practicing comedy with every step of his life. In 1913, a film producer saw him and offered him a chance to work in movies. This was a new world for Charlie. He had been on stage before, but film was something different. Still, he accepted. He started working with Keystone Studios, and soon, he created a character that would change everything: the Tramp. The Tramp was not just a funny character. He was poor, clumsy, but kind. He wore big shoes, a small coat, a bowler hat, and carried a cane. But what made the Tramp powerful was that people saw themselves in him. He made audiences laugh, but also cry. He was funny, but also human. In every stumble and fall, people saw the truth of life, the struggle, the pain, but also the hope. Charlie's movies became popular very quickly. Within just 1 year, he was not just another actor, he was a star. Audiences loved him because he brought something new, comedy with heart. His films did not need many words. His face, his body language, his timing, all told the story. Even people who didn't speak English could understand and laugh with him. That's why his fame spread across the world. But behind the laughter, Charlie never forgot where he came from. Every time he created a film, he remembered the hunger, the cold nights, the loneliness of his childhood. He put that pain into his art. That is why his movies touched people so deeply. They were not just funny, they were real. Charlie Chaplin's big break in America was not just about luck. It was about years of struggle, years of practice, years of dreaming. It was about turning pain into laughter, weakness into strength, and sadness into joy. America gave him the stage, But Charlie gave the world a gift, the gift of laughter that hides deep wisdom. Chapter 4. The Rise of the Tramp. When Charlie Chaplin created the Tramp, he did not know that this little character would become one of the most loved figures in the history of cinema. At first, it was just a costume, a small jacket, oversized pants, shoes too big for his feet, a little hat, and a cane. But when Charlie stepped into this role, magic happened. The Tramp was born, and with him, Charlie's destiny changed forever. The Tramp was not a rich man, not a powerful man. He was poor, clumsy, and always getting into trouble. But inside, he had a good heart. He helped others. He tried to survive. He dreamed of love and happiness even if life was hard. Audiences around the world saw themselves in the Tramp. He was not a hero with money or strength. He was a hero of the common people. Charlie's genius was that he made people laugh and cry at the same time. In one moment, the Tramp would slip on a banana peel and fall, making everyone laugh loudly. But in the next moment, he would sit alone, hungry, looking at food he could not afford, and the audience would feel his sadness deeply. No words were needed. His face, his eyes, his movements said everything. As silent films grew in popularity, Charlie became a superstar. By 1915, just 2 years after joining Keystone Studios, his films were being shown everywhere. Crowds lined up at cinemas waiting to see his next comedy. His name was on posters, his image in newspapers, his face recognized by millions. From being a boy who once begged for food in London, Charlie had become the most famous comedian in the world. But fame never changed his vision. For Charlie, the Tramp was not just funny. The Tramp was a way to show the truth about life. He wanted to tell stories about poverty, love, kindness, and survival. He showed that even in the hardest times, a smile could be found. He gave people hope when they had nothing else. One of his most famous films from this time was The Kid, 1921. In this film, the Tramp finds an abandoned child and raises him. It was not just comedy. It was full of emotion, love, and struggle. The movie touched millions of hearts because it was inspired by Charlie's own painful childhood. He knew what it felt like to be poor, abandoned, and without love. Through the film, he gave people comfort, showing them that even in suffering, kindness can survive. The rise of the Tramp also changed cinema forever. Before Charlie, comedy was mostly about silly jokes and simple tricks. But Charlie gave comedy a soul. He proved that movies could be funny and meaningful at the same time. He showed that laughter is not only entertainment, it is a language that speaks to the heart. By the 1920s, Charlie Chaplin was no longer just an actor. He was a symbol. The Tramp was loved in America, Europe, Asia, Africa, everywhere. People who did not even speak English could understand him, because laughter has no borders. His films united the world in a shared emotion, joy. Charlie once said, "To truly laugh, you must be able to take your pain and play with it." That is exactly what he did. He turned his own pain into laughter for others. And that is why the Tramp became more than a character. He became a mirror of humanity. From a hungry boy in London to the world's greatest silent film star, Charlie Chaplin's rise was nothing short of extraordinary. And it was only the beginning. The Tramp had risen, and with him, Charlie's influence would reach higher than he ever dreamed. Chapter 5. Struggles Behind the Fame. Fame looks bright from the outside. People see the lights, the applause, the smiling faces on the big screen. But what they don't see is the loneliness that hides behind it. For Charlie Chaplin, success was a dream come true, but it also carried heavy shadows. By the 1920s, Charlie was one of the richest and most famous men in Hollywood. He had gone from sleeping on the streets of London to living in mansions. Everywhere he went, crowds followed him. People adored the tramp, and they adored the man behind him. But deep inside, Charlie carried wounds that no amount of fame could heal. He struggled with trust, growing up in poverty, betrayed by life again and again. Charlie had learned to protect himself. Now surrounded by fame, money, and new friends, he often wondered, who truly loves me, and who just wants my success? This fear haunted him. He built walls around his heart, afraid of being used, afraid of being abandoned again, just like when he was a child. Charlie also faced battles in his personal life. Love was not easy for him. He longed for a family, for stability, for the warmth he had missed as a boy. But relationships brought him heartbreak. His fame attracted attention, but not always true connection. Behind closed doors, he felt the emptiness of being admired by millions yet understood by very few. Even in his career, challenges never disappeared. Hollywood was changing quickly. Silent films were at their peak. But whispers of a new era, talking pictures, were beginning. Many wondered if Chaplin, who built his empire without words, could survive this change. The pressure was heavy, but the deepest struggle came from within. Charlie was a perfectionist. Every scene, every movement of the tramp had to be perfect. He would shoot the same scene dozens, sometimes hundreds of times until it felt right. This obsession created masterpieces, but it also drained him. Nights without sleep, days filled with stress, endless worry that his next film might fail. Success gave him everything, but it demanded everything in return. Yet through all this, Charlie's strength was his art. He poured his pain, his loneliness, and his struggles into his films. When the world laughed, they were not just laughing at comedy. They were laughing at Charlie's own life, his mistakes, his sadness, his fight to keep going. That was his genius. He turned suffering into laughter, heartbreak into hope. Charlie once said, "Life is a tragedy when seen in close-up, but a comedy in long shot." He understood that everyone carries pain, but if you step back, you can find meaning, even humor, in the hardest times. That philosophy kept him alive when the weight of fame felt too heavy to carry. In truth, behind the fame, Charlie was still that little boy from London, searching for love, searching for peace, searching for a place where he belonged. The world saw a star, but inside, he was still fighting battles no one else could see. And yet these struggles shaped him. Without them, there would be no tramp, no stories that touched the heart, no laughter that carried through generations. The pain he carried in silence was the same pain that made his art immortal. Chapter 6. The Battle with Sound. The year was 1927. The world of cinema changed forever with the release of The Jazz Singer, the first feature film with synchronized sound. Audiences were amazed. Suddenly, movies could talk. Actors' voices filled the theaters. The silent era, the very foundation of Charlie Chaplin's career, was on the edge of extinction. For most silent film stars, this was the end. Many who had ruled the screen were swept away overnight. Their careers collapsed because their voices did not match their faces, or their acting style felt outdated in the new age of sound. Hollywood was transforming, and the rule was simple: adapt or disappear. But Charlie Chaplin was not just any actor. He was the tramp. His comedy, his charm, his power, all came without words. The world wondered, could Chaplin survive in this new world of sound? Deep inside, Charlie was torn. He saw sound as both exciting and dangerous. Yes, talking films were popular, but he feared they would destroy the universal magic of cinema. Silent films had no language barrier. They spoke directly to the heart. A man in London, a farmer in India, a family in America. They all laughed and cried with The Tramp. But with sound, comedy would be trapped by language, by accents, by words. So Charlie made a bold decision. While the rest of Hollywood rushed into sound, Chaplin resisted. He refused to give The Tramp a voice. He believed silence had more power than words. It was a risky choice. Some called him stubborn, others called him foolish. But Charlie was determined. In 1931, when sound films were dominating the industry, he released City Lights, a silent film. People thought it would fail, that audiences no longer wanted silence. But when the movie premiered, the audience wept and cheered. City Lights became one of Chaplin's greatest masterpieces, proving that true art does not depend on technology, it depends on the human heart. Still, the battle with sound was not over. As the years passed, pressure grew stronger. By the mid-1930s, silent films were almost gone. Finally, in 1940, Chaplin gave in to sound, but on his own terms. He released The Great Dictator, his first talking film. And when Charlie finally spoke on screen, it wasn't comedy. It wasn't nonsense. It was one of the most powerful speeches in film history. In that moment, he reminded the world why he had resisted sound for so long. Words, he believed, should not be wasted. When used, they must mean something. And in The Great Dictator, he used them to speak about freedom, humanity, and peace, messages that still echo today. The battle with sound was not just about technology. It was about courage. Chaplin taught us that you don't have to follow the crowd. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing. Sometimes standing alone, trusting your vision, and waiting for the right moment is the bravest choice of all. The world may change. Trends may rise and fall. But true greatness comes from those who stay authentic, those who refuse to let fear or pressure erase who they really are. And so, while many stars disappeared with the rise of sound, Charlie Chaplin rose higher. His silence had already made history. Now even his voice would. Chapter 7. The Great Dictator and the Speech That Shook the World. The year was 1940. The world was on fire. Hitler had risen to power. Europe was at war. Millions lived in fear, and America watched as darkness spread across nations. In this storm, Charlie Chaplin made his boldest decision yet. He would use his art not just to entertain, but to fight. And so he began working on The Great Dictator, his very first talking film. This was not just another comedy. It was dangerous. It was controversial. And it was deeply personal. Why? Because Chaplin dared to parody Adolf Hitler, one of the most feared men in the world at that time. He played a dictator who looked, moved, and spoke like Hitler, but with humor that exposed the absurdity of tyranny. But The Great Dictator was more than satire. At the heart of the film was a speech, Chaplin's most powerful moment on screen. A moment that would echo through history. In the final scene, Chaplin stands not as the tramp, not as the dictator, but as himself, as a human being, speaking directly to the world. And for the first time, audiences heard his real voice. He said words that were not written for applause, but for humanity. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. At a time when the world was drowning in hate, Chaplin spoke of hope. At a time when dictators demanded obedience, he called for kindness, freedom, and compassion. His speech wasn't about politics. It was about people. It was about us. For some, it was shocking. For others, it was life-changing. But one thing was clear. This was no longer just comedy. This was courage in its purest form. Think about the risk he took. He was a comedian, not a politician. He could have stayed silent, made lighthearted films, avoided controversy. But instead, he used his art to fight against one of history's darkest forces. That is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. The great dictator taught us something timeless. Your voice matters. Even if you think you are small, even if you feel powerless, your voice can inspire change. It can give hope. It can challenge hate. Chaplin didn't just act in this film, he stood up. He showed that laughter can be a weapon, that humor can break down fear, and that words, when spoken with courage, can shake the world. That final speech is remembered even today, quoted in classrooms, protests, and films. Why? Because truth never expires. And because Chaplin, who once conquered the world with silence, proved that when he finally spoke, his voice was unforgettable. The Great Dictator was not just a film. It was a message to humanity. Don't give in to hate. Don't bow to fear. Remember your humanity. Remember your power. And in that moment, Charlie Chaplin, the man who began life in poverty, who once performed for pennies on the streets of London, stood as one of the loudest voices for peace in the entire world. Chapter 8: The Fall of a Legend, Exile and Controversy. After the Great Dictator, Charlie Chaplin was no longer just a comedian. He was a voice of humanity. But with great courage often comes great resistance. And soon the very world that once adored him turned against him. The 1940s and 1950s were a time of fear in America. The Cold War had begun. The hunt for communists had reached fever pitch. Politicians, actors, and artists were accused of being un-American. And Chaplin, with his outspoken views on war, peace, and equality, became a target. You see, Chaplin had always spoken his mind. He supported the poor. He criticized greed. He called out governments for fueling war. To some, this was bravery. To others, it was dangerous. The FBI began a file on him, tracking his every move. Newspapers spread rumors, calling him a communist, a traitor, even immoral. But it wasn't just politics. Chaplin's personal life also became a weapon against him. His relationships, his marriages, his scandals. They were dragged into the spotlight and used to destroy his image. People who once laughed with him now judged him. Hollywood, the place that had made him a king, began to push him away. Then, in 1952, as Chaplin sailed to Europe to premiere his new film Limelight, the unthinkable happened. The U.S. government revoked his re-entry permit. Imagine that. After more than 40 years of shaping Hollywood, after building an empire of art and laughter, Charlie Chaplin was told he was no longer welcome in the very country he helped make famous. It was exile, not by choice, but by rejection. The man who had given the world so much joy was now cast out as an enemy. But here's the truth about greatness. It doesn't die in silence. Chaplin did not stop creating. He made Switzerland his home. He kept making films. And while America tried to forget him, the world did not. His influence grew across Europe, Asia, Africa. Everywhere people understood laughter, they understood Chaplin. Yet, behind the scenes there was pain. For a man who had risen from poverty, conquered the world, and spoken to millions, being branded a traitor cut deep, he felt betrayed. He felt misunderstood. Fame had brought him everything, and taken it all away. But here is the lesson. Success is never a straight line. The higher you climb, the stronger the winds against you. And Chaplin's story reminds us that even legends fall. But what truly matters is how you rise again. Years later, when time softened wounds, America realized what it had lost. In 1972, 2 decades after his exile, Chaplin was invited back to receive an honorary Academy Award. When he walked onto that stage, the crowd gave him the longest standing ovation in Oscar history. 12 full minutes of applause. The same country that had rejected him now honored him as one of the greatest artists of all time. Chaplin's exile teaches us this: society can turn against you. Rumors can destroy your name, and power can strip away your position. But true greatness, the kind built on vision, courage, and love, can never be erased. Charlie Chaplin may have been cast out of Hollywood, but he was never cast out of history. His fall was dramatic. His pain was real. But his legacy, unshakable. Chapter 9. The Final Curtain. Legacy of a Genius. Every great story must one day end. But the way it ends, that is what defines how it will be remembered. For Charlie Chaplin, the final years of his life were not filled with applause and bright lights, but with reflection, family, and the quiet weight of a legacy too vast to measure. After his exile, Chaplin settled in Switzerland, in a beautiful mansion called Manoir de Baume. There, away from the chaos of Hollywood, he lived with his wife Una and their children. For the first time, he allowed himself something he had never truly known: peace. The world outside still whispered his name. But Chaplin, the man, became simply a father, a husband, and a thinker. Yet even in silence, his presence was everywhere. His films were studied in schools. His characters inspired new generations of artists. His face, that little tramp with the bowler hat and cane, had become a symbol recognized in every corner of the globe. Chaplin had created not just movies, he had created language. The language of laughter, the language of humanity. And then, the moment came when the world tried to right its wrong. In 1972, 2 decades after rejecting him, Hollywood called Chaplin back. At the Academy Awards, he was given an honorary Oscar for the incalculable effect he has had in making motion. Picture's the art form of this century. When he walked onto that stage, something miraculous happened. The entire audience stood. They clapped. They cried. And they kept clapping. For 12 minutes, 12 long minutes, the world honored a man it had once exiled. It was the longest standing ovation in Oscar history. In that moment, the wound of rejection healed. Not fully, but enough to remind him that his work had never been forgotten. But even legends cannot escape time. In his later years, Chaplin's health declined. He grew weaker, moving less, speaking less. On Christmas Day, 1977, at the age of 88, Charlie Chaplin took his final breath in the quiet of his home in Switzerland. The world lost not just an actor, not just a comedian, but a man who had given humanity the rarest gift of all: the ability to laugh in the face of pain. And yet, did he really die? Because here is the truth. Chaplin's body left this earth, but his soul remained in every reel of film. In every moment of laughter he gave to the broken-hearted. In every silent tear he turned into joy. His tramp character is still alive. His message is still alive. His legacy is immortal. Charlie Chaplin taught us that poverty does not define you. Rejection does not destroy you, and even in silence, you can speak louder than any voice. He rose from the slums of London to become the most beloved figure in the world. He lost everything, yet still ended as a legend. So what do we learn from his story? That greatness is not about never falling. It's about always rising again. that art is not about money or fame. It's about touching lives. And that no matter how small you feel, with courage, creativity, and heart, you can change the world. The curtain may have closed on Charlie Chaplin's life, but his stage is eternal. His story is eternal. His laughter is eternal. And so the world bows, not just to the man who made us laugh, but to the genius who reminded us of our humanity. And there you have it, 9 powerful truths about money that most people never learn until it's too late. The choice is yours. Stay trapped in the cycle of financial struggle, or step into the mindset that builds real wealth and freedom. Remember, knowledge is only potential power. It becomes real power when you act on it. Start small, stay consistent, and watch how your life transforms. If this message inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the world needs more people who rise, hustle, and break free.